Hello and welcome. My name's Vicky Washay and I'm your host, the host of A Wealthy Life podcast. The aim of this show is to help you identify the values, decide on the actions that you want to take in order to live a life of your design. And in this episode, although there is a hint of property in it, I'm speaking to Cyril Thomas, who has been an incredible insight into his entrepreneurial journey from selling laptops at university to now running industry leading events in the property world. The point of this podcast is to show you how just following step after step has led him to this position. And that's actually very repeatable for anybody. And I've certainly taken a lot of inspiration from it. I hope you will too, and enjoy listening to my conversation with Cyril Thomas. Hello and welcome. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see that I've got a guest with me today, the fabulous Cyril Thomas. We have got so much to talk to. Strap yourself in. I'm going to try and keep it to 40 minutes, but know that this is a 4-hour conversation that we're having really fast to get all of this in. Cyril, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Hello, Vicky. Thank you for inviting me into your platform, and I look forward to speaking to you and your audience.
Thank you. So, listeners, just to let you know, Cyril very rarely does a podcast, so we are truly blessed. And if you knew how busy the man is, you'd know why he doesn't have time to do many podcasts. But also, he's a very shy guy, but has an amazing story. And that's why I really wanted to get him here and put him under the spotlight and really force him to spill the beans. Because I think what you're going to understand here is that I very rarely meet someone who I think is truly entrepreneurial. I think Cyril, to spare your blushes, Cyril, but I do think Cyril is very, very entrepreneurial. He is someone I would call an entrepreneur. But having said that, his journey is, to use the word simple, then denies the fact that I've just said that he's an entrepreneur, but is so simple in its
linear.
Yeah, linear. It is linear, but it's so clear. Yeah, clear. Your progression in the business is so clear that actually it is something that other people could do. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I can't invest in property because whatever the excuse, I think at the end of this conversation, you're going to recognize from Cyril that, yeah, as you say, linear, you literally just done the next thing after the next thing because the next thing has become obvious because you're doing the thing before. So it's putting one foot in front of the others. I think I spoke about my overnight success has only taken me 20 years so far. It is like that. And I think that people are so swayed by what they see on the telly that there's get rich quick and everything else. So look, let's get into this. I know the story starts at university. So there's two bits here. One, you met your future wife, but two, you were having potentially your first entrepreneurial moment. So how did the journey to hosting the Property Investor Awards, which we'll talk about, and the Property Education Advisory Service and all of that stuff, how did that start with one idea at university?
Okay, thank you, Vicky. So at university, I was involved with a number of different communities, and I ended up starting a community called the Essex Entrepreneurship Society, where we attracted like-minded students to sort of come and converse, and we attracted speakers, and it gave me a taste of what it meant to, I suppose, organize a network and what the power of being a center of influence was. And also the art of being able to give to people, provide value for people, and expecting not much in return. But as a result, I realized that good things continue to happen to me and people continue to do things for me, which actually was very valuable on my journey.
And so was this out of the pure thing of the community, or did you charge for this? Was this a business idea or I need a community around me idea?
So the Essex Entrepreneurship Society, I didn't charge anything really. It was more a case of I wanted to be around people who were thinking like me, because I value sort of the energy you get from exchanging ideas with people and being around people. And the cliche saying of you are your closest 5 friends, etc. And at university, you can imagine that whilst I enjoyed going out and all of the things that standard students do, I quite enjoyed seeking out those individuals that were doing very similar things to what I was doing. I even remember like some of the friends that I acquired who are still friends today. We had the captain of the kickboxing society, or the captain of the travel society, and he was a remarkable guy in his own right. He used to basically get holidays paid for himself by creating the traveling society. All these people come on holiday with him, and as a result, he get a free holiday.
Nice, nice. So actually mixing entrepreneurial people in there, and I know that's one of the things that has been very prevalent in my journey, is that it is quite a lonely journey when you do something that not everybody else does, and therefore finding ways to gather the few people who might be like you or similar to you is really strength. But you went from the Essex Entrepreneurial Society, that's quite a mouthful, into then a business idea.
Yes, that's correct. So in my second year of university, I came up with the idea of purchasing second-hand laptops from eBay. So I purchased them for bundles of 5 laptops for £250. I would then take those laptops and rent them out to students for between £5 to £10 a week, but with a £50 deposit. Key thing being that I get my money back from the purchase straight away through the deposit. But then, 50% of the time, those students were going to purchase the laptop at the end of maybe a 3 or 4 week rental to up to a 50-week rental, where they say, well, actually, we've now got all of our information on there. We might as well keep the laptop. And then they'll purchase it for £150 plus. So there'll be profit in that respect.
Nice.
We grew that business to about 100 laptops being out at any point in time. It was quite comedic actually when I was in a student accommodation where this massive forklift truck would pull up at the front yard, and all the neighbors would be peeping out the window thinking, what is going on in that property? What's this large thing that's being placed on the lawn of this property? Then I would come out and sort of transport all the laptops into my room, which looking back now probably wasn't the safest thing to do because the neighborhood was a student area. You know what goes in the student areas. But it worked, and it got me to the situation where I am today.
And that situation was from the money that you made from that, you bought your first property.
Yes, so I managed to sort of expand that business by franchising it to, I think it was Leicester University at the time. And with the proceeds from that, I was able to purchase my first 2-bedroom flat in Colchester. And it was a ex-council flat, which we converted to a 4-bedroom HMO.
Okay, so there's a little bit to unpack there. So had you actually graduated when you bought this first property?
No, it was in the year before graduation.
So before, okay, so having been a university lecturer, I and a former student as well. So I've done my degree and my master's. So I've been both a student and I've been a university lecturer, and I know that pretty much for the first year, everybody's in the student bar, and then about 3 weeks before the end of the first year, they suddenly realize that they've got to actually do something in order to pass into the second year. And the second year, they tend to knuckle down. So not only are your studies picking up, but you're now running both a networking event and this whole laptop business, which you've then franchised. But then in your third year, you've still got a dissertation to run, and you've got enough money from the business. So that must mean that there's been some I don't know, volume going on, and that means time going on in order to get the money together to buy the house. Is time management a strong skill?
Time management strong skill. Very good question. Okay, I'll give you a bit more information. I'm not sure if I've shared this before, actually. So when I started at university, I started on a course called Computer Science and Software Engineering. And I got a 2-1 in the first year. But the issue was that it left me with no time for anything else. That course was intense. So I spoke to my mother and I said, listen, Mum, I'm actually going to be quitting this course and converting to a business course. And she said, why would you do such a thing, son? Just stick at it, it will be fine. I said, listen, I know I can graduate with a 2-1 or first class, but it will leave me no time to do anything else. And she said, well, you're supposed to be studying at university. That's the right thing to do. But I said, I've got a load of friends who, they're bright people, but I think I'm just as bright as them. And they're studying things like accounting and business studies and all this sort of stuff, which they seem to always have time for other things. I'm going to transfer to their course because actually what I'd like to do at university is start a business. So it makes sense if I'm starting a business to be studying a business course whilst there. I spoke to my dean at university and he said he's more than happy for me to transfer to the second year in accounting and management. That was my choice. And I said to him, I said, no, I said, I'd like to start in the first year again, because I also realized that at university, there are a lot of resources for people who are entrepreneurial. There's all sorts of competitions where they give you money prizes. There's resources that they give students in regards to business and mentors. There's all sorts of things you have access to at university that once you graduate, they don't really want to know.
Wow.
So I did that, transferred to accounting and management, and it just turned out that the course was very easy, not because I was super bright, but because I was in business. I was running business. So when they asked for case studies, when they were asking me to understand certain things, I could relate it directly to what I was already doing and building,
Yeah.
which made it easier to do.
That's fascinating, because the two courses that I taught when I was at university was computing on one side and business on the other. And I taught computing to business students and business to computing students. So I always said I was teaching the unwilling, the unwanted. They never wanted my modules, but so I had to like be creative to make them fun. But fascinating, because actually the business courses were always considered the place where people went for an easy ride. And yet you have gone to university knowing that you want to set up a business, and then engineered it so that when you didn't have enough time the first time round, you've changed it so that you've got the time and accessing those resources. So yeah, again, I'm still going to go back with possibly the most entrepreneurial person I know. So now we've got degree number 2, starting back at the beginning. We've got the Entrepreneur Society going on. You've got the laptop thing going on. You've franchised that. You've got your first property. You've finally graduated. Here we are coming out the other end. And then now I need to pick you up on, it's not enough to have bought a 2-bedroom flat, which most people would have let out as a 2-bedroom flat to one person. But you've somehow converted, and I assume it had the space that it was a large 2-bedroom, but that you've converted that into a 4-bedroom HMO, being house of multiple occupants, so that you're going to share that out. And was that with students in mind?
Yeah, most certainly. So being a student, you tend to live in student accommodation. I knew what I was paying to rent because I didn't live on campus in my second year. I moved out with a few people and I lived with them for the duration of me being at university thereafter. I knew what I was paying the landlord. I did some calculations in regards to prices in the area, and I realized that this 2-bedroom flat, which at the time was £100,000, you know, when
Not
I looked
cheap.
at, well, it wasn't cheap, but I think it was reasonable because when
Yeah,
I
but
read
if you started this like 15 years ago and you're in
2006,
university, that's a lot of money for a young person.
yeah, I guess so, but I think it's all down to the maths. So when I looked at what I was paying in rent, and I did the calculations, and I knew the interest rates at the time, etc., and I knew sort of how to get a mortgage because it was a different sort of situation then in regards to mortgages. It sort of made sense for me to go down that route, and I didn't live in it. I didn't sort of become my own landlord. I just continued to rent with my student friends, and I let out that property, which was roughly about a 5-minute walk from where I was living.
I love that sentence. It's all down to the maths. That's absolutely how I feel about, well, almost like life. It's down to the maths. So whatever you're doing, a spreadsheet can give you the answer.
Yeah.
It's great. Okay, so we've got property number 1. Did you ever go and get a proper job? Like
Um,
have you ever been
I
an
know. Yeah,
employee
no,
by someone else?
unfortunately not. So my last job, quote unquote, I guess student job, was at Pizza Hut, and that was when I first came to university. I was with them during college, and I transferred from the branch in London to a branch in Colchester. They made me an assistant manager there. You know, they gave me all the training to become a general manager. When I explained to them that I wasn't going to university to become a general manager at Pizza Hut, as delightful as it may seem, they were quite fine about that. They were quite fine. So it got to the point of my second year of university where I'd launched the business, and I handed in my notice with the Pizza Hut firm. And since then, I've been self-employed and working for myself, and I've never really looked back. But I do sometimes think, have I missed out on the, you know, the learning you get from being in a corporate environment, and learning how to deal with people in a certain way, learning the politics of such
Yeah.
a situation. I do sometimes wonder.
Yeah. But do you really regret not knowing how to play nice with others and fit in the politics? Because actually look at the position you're in. You're fine. If that's a missed lesson, I don't think I would worry about that
I would
bit
definitely not
myself.
use the word regret, but I do wonder.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, absolutely. So there was a piece here for me, which is university and becoming a general manager and all of this sort of stuff. And I'm almost trying to think meanly, sorry, but we've known one another long enough, so I think I can get away with an almost a mean question. But if I'm trying to think up excuses as to why it's all right for you, and that's the sentence I used to get a lot. People used to say, "Oh, it's all right for you, Vicky," and then they've made assumptions about me. Well, they can't be making assumptions because you've been very transparent about this part of the journey, and we've not even really got into property proper yet. What about, were you getting financial help from your mum and dad? Is your dad a business owner or your mum a business owner? Have you got some sneaky thing in the background? How are you, Cyril, so entrepreneurial? How is this possible? What's driven you? Have you had sneaky help, or is this just you?
Well, I think I'm not going to say I was lucky to a certain degree, but I think we are all influenced by our environment. Now, some people are born into wealth and, they will utilize the card that's been dealt to them. Some people are born into poverty and some may not do well out of that. Some may use that to their advantage. I was born into a family where my mother worked very hard. My father worked very hard. Unfortunately, they separated when I was younger. It turned out that, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of wealth in the family. My mother worked very hard raising 4 children. I have 3 sisters. But she was very principled. And she was somebody who basically instilled in me at a very young age that you should never be shy of work. So when I came to university, I think I was already very confident that as long as I put in the work, I will achieve what I need to achieve. And it never really was a second thought for me as to will I be able to achieve what I want to achieve. It was more a case of it's a matter of time.
Nice.
But I also at college, I suppose I immersed myself with the podcasts and the webinars and the American books, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, to the point where I probably was quite irritating to my friendship base at the time. They probably just want to go out and do things in central London and whatnot. And I'm there trying to say, you know what, let's buy this board game called Cash Flow. Let's play this Saturday.
Oh God,
They'd be
yeah.
definitely thinking, well, there were a few friends back then that actually did take to it. And when looking at it now, those people went through a very similar journey that I did. And I met one about a week ago, and we hadn't seen each other in a few years. He said, Cyril, do you remember the time where you just purchased your first property, I just purchased my first property, and we went to the property that I purchased, and we got out a game of Cash Flow, and we sat down for like 4 hours, and we just played the board game.
Oh, it's so fun. And you know what was really like, there's a bit of me going, oh, listen to this. All the time you're doing this, I'm doing very similar things, but I'm an adult with 2 kids at that point, and you're a whippersnapper coming out of university. And so we're listening to that. I remember that I don't know if they still do it quite as much, but there was a real in amongst the people who network with one another, going and playing cash flow games. Oh,
I remember.
what was there was a guy I used to go to, I feel like not Marble Arch, Kensington, somewhere like that. We used to drive up to London to
play the game.
To play the game. Yeah, I mean, like, and now you can probably play it online or something, but yeah, oh my goodness. So it's fascinating, isn't it? All these little bits. And the other thing I really like is, your mum being a single mum, bringing up 4 kids, and that sometimes repeats in families. And what you said is, there can be people who are born into wealth and that they can use that wealth, but equally they can fritter that wealth.
Right.
And then there are people who are born into poverty and they stay there, and there are others that use that as a lever to get themselves out of it. So I don't think the amount of money that you've had in your house is really the thing. It can set you up with limiting beliefs maybe, but you can get out of that. I think the thing is if you like, the values that your mum instilled in you, and that thing about hard work, not necessarily, maybe she was thinking of it as a job, but you've interpreted it as hard work. And that hard work has led you to be a different type of student. And you're only a teenager here. You're like normal age student, are you? Like 19,
Yeah,
20?
normal age student. Yeah, very. Yeah, I think well, with what happened at university, it set me 1 year back. But other than that,
Yeah, because you took an extra year. So for me, I didn't go to university till I was 28.
Wow.
So I would have been 28 in the class with all the 18, 19-year-olds. And so for me, I sought out and made friends with the university lecturers because some of them were closer in age to me than
What
the
did you
others were.
study? What did you
My
study?
first degree was in business and computing.
Yes.
And I had one of those pivotal moments where I got an opportunity to take a master's in programming, and I started coding because like I'm running, my university years would have been 10 years before you, and started looking at programming to make the little ball. Do you remember the
Yeah, that ball that goes.
Pong or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
this? So I wrote a program to play Pong or whatever it was called, and that was the first piece of programming. And there was that moment where I thought, do you know what? If I go this route, and it might be similar to you with the computer, but I'm going to spend all my life in front of this screen, and I'm never going to meet people, and I'm never going to have opportunities that might come from meeting those people, because my only friend is going to be the screen and the keyboard. And I didn't want that. And so I then, after my first degree, and I'd been doing some teaching on the side, so I suppose similar, but I was driven out of the need for money. So in my second year, I had the degree, 4 modules, 5 part-time jobs, and 2 kids under 3, because
Wow.
I needed to have money, So I went to all my different computing jobs. So I start off in the morning and switch all the computers on. So like, they're so old fashioned. They were the big clunky things with a dot matrix printer, and I had to carry the box of print paper in and make sure that it was up and running, and switch all the computers on. And then at the end of the night, I had the job to switch all the computers off again, or reset them all for the evening classes. And then I started doing some teaching classes, and from those teaching classes, again, met more lecturers. And then one of them said, why don't you do a master's? First of all, I did an education qualification, a postgraduate diploma in higher education to be a teacher. And then I did one of those no content degrees. There was a bit of a fashion for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a degree in individual learning, and we're going to decide what we want to learn, how we want to learn it, and who we want to teach it to us. And at the end of it, what we're going to do is understand the meaning of knowledge. Okay, so it was a very complicated 2 years of my life,
Quite a lot of similarities. You've obviously had to deal with, I would say, more, because it's not easy doing all of that stuff whilst raising children as well. I take my hat off to you.
Thank you. So so it's interesting, isn't it? But you know what? I don't know if you resonate with this. I just think, crikey, I don't think I'm anything that special. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. If I could do it with 2 kids and you don't have 2 kids, well, then of course you can do it. Because if I can do it with kids, you could do it without kids. And I just feel ordinary. But what I'm listening to you, and we're sort of saying, oh, look, there's some similarities here. I'm seeing you as having, I don't know, something about you, like a spark about you. And I've referred to you as that entrepreneur and being entrepreneurial. And then I'm trying to go, well, okay, how can we dissect this and make it that other people can step into this? And we haven't even really got to the property bit. So I mean, let's wind back from all of this and go, there's more to the journey yet. Okay. So we've only just left university. You've got 1 degree. I know that not only have you got your own portfolio and you've got these houses of multiple occupancy and everything else, but you've then moved into commercial as being the thing that you like investing in. You've done all of this without wadges of money from other people. This is you funding things, you and your wife together, or your former university girlfriend's now your wife and the mother of your children, you doing it together. That's your business. But also there's still more, because that whole line, so there are all these lines, but actually I'm keep using the word linear, but as the lines come down, you can see dotted lines where the idea from this led to the idea from that led to the idea of something else, but all of the money is then going into the property because the idea of that was that the spreadsheet said it made sense. And so you've gone from the Essex Entrepreneurial Group, you've then got a property group that you set up.
The Essex Property Network.
Yeah, and that was, I think that's the first place we met, wasn't it? The first place
I think
we
so, because I'm quite sure you were a speaker on a number of occasions.
Yeah. I think I came out and spoke maybe 3 times. You were like my furthest away when I first went to you. You were the first.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. You said it's the furthest away. So if I wasn't running a property networking event, you weren't going to come out to Colchester to see me. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
You know? So I looked at it as, why will people come to Colchester? Because being a student, even though I had my business and I had the property, it was still a case of I was money conscious. You're conscious of the fact that I didn't have a lot of resources at the time. I was building things up, and I couldn't keep traveling around the country to Birmingham, to London. This stuff was costly. So I decided that by organizing the networking event, I'll be able to add value to the community locally, whilst also adding value to the speakers, whilst also ticking a box, which helped me, which was I wanted to get to know these speakers. I wanted to understand. I wanted the knowledge exchange and all of that stuff. So it was what you may call a win-win situation.
Yeah, no, genius, absolutely genius, really. And
But
again,
it wasn't genius, though. Was it, Vicky? It was common sense in that respect, because if you think about it.
Okay, common sense, but do you know what? If it's that much common sense, why isn't everybody doing it?
Well, I'll tell you why I think that, because I think anyone could do that. Anyone could get up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm going to put an event on Eventbrite. I'm going to find a location that just be maybe above a bar somewhere, or somewhere which says, as long as you can get 10 or 15 people in the room, you've got the room for free, and people will come. But it takes some work.
Yes.
How do you?
I ran one, the London Property Connection, I think we called it LPC, the London Property Connection out West London way in the end, a couple of years after you did yours. And every month you've got to have your speakers, you're always doing the marketing, but it's not a high income generator, so this isn't how you're going to get rich.
Can't do it for the money. No.
You're doing it for the connections. But my style is less about networking. I'm rubbish at doing that, and I was always checking that people are all right, and I'm like more the organizer of checking the room, and I'd see the people that I was doing it with, and they were having the quality conversations, and I was thinking, I'm definitely doing it wrong. And if you knew the 2 people I did it with, you can see that they are expert networkers, and that's absolutely, I can rock up to a room, I don't mind 5,000, 10,000 people I don't know. You put me on the stage and I can speak about a topic. Obviously give me a hint who they are so I can make it a relevant topic and add value. That doesn't faze me in the slightest, but put me in a room where I don't know anybody and I just cringe. I loathe it. Absolutely loathe it. And so I said to you right at the beginning that you're shy. And I know that you've never been a great fan of being the host at the front, whereas I'd be quite fans. I'll stand at the front. I don't mind doing that bit. And yet you forced yourself to do that bit. Did you have the time to network with the people?
Yeah, so I think I structured it in a way, and you might remember this, Vicky, when you came to speak at the event. I structured it in a way that it was very casual. I wanted it to be a group of people who I enjoyed being around. So there would almost be, what would you call it? We set what's the word for it when you the culture. We set the culture. So as people came into that environment, they knew they needed to be a bit more relaxed about things. They needed to not be pushy with sales. They needed to understand this is a knowledge exchange, which means give and you will receive.
Yeah.
And with that sort of culture, those friendships and those relationships are still relationships that I have today. A chap, I think I call him out, Nurinder. Do you remember him? I'm not sure if you do. He's gone on to create the Essex Property Lunch, which is pretty much 90% a group of the old guys from the Essex Property Network who we all get together like once a quarter for lunch now. But that's his thing, and he does it really well. But it's just something which I look back and I was very fond of those days. But things change, you move on to other things, and you have to decide where your time is best spent now.
And you moved on from having this network of people coming to you instead of you going to them to recognizing, I think you said that the foundations of the Property Investor Awards was really the Property Investor Christmas dinner,
Yes,
Christmas
dinner.
party, yeah. And again, I remember coming to those back in the early days. And so we've got again an evolution here. So at the time you needed the network, and then you realized you sort of like missing the friendship, and then you're missing that what everybody else does at Christmas parties. So you put on the party, but that's evolved from, how did it start out? Was it 12-ish years ago? You had like 100 people in the room?
Yeah, so it was actually about 15 years ago that it was the
Gosh, that
one which I
long.
started, yes, or maybe even slightly more. So that started because once I'd started the business and bought a few properties, I then realized that property investment as a small, I suppose, individual investor was quite a lonely game.
Yeah.
And I saw all of my fellow students who had graduated going off to work in these organizations where they were having these lovely end of year parties, and there's all sorts of social groups that they were involved in. And I was just sitting in my bedroom, sort of mapping out where to put stud walls and where to buy the next washing machine from, etc. So that's when I called a number of people, including yourself, and I said, listen, there's going to be this Christmas dinner that I'm going to put on at the end of the year somewhere in central London. Will you come down? You know, and 100 people showed up, and we had a fantastic time, and that went on for a few years, where it continued to grow year on year, and it got to the point where I developed that social network, and I didn't really need the dinner or the Christmas party to satisfy the social element that I was missing previously.
Yeah.
But I also had people putting pressure on me to say, well, actually, now you've created this thing, we quite enjoy it. We still want to come to it. So please do continue to host it. And I made a decision then that, okay, for it to be meaningful to the industry and to me, I'm going to introduce a few awards, because what that will do is it will start attracting people who are doing interesting things. And we start to get to understand year on year exactly what deals are working in the market, what deals are being done, who are the creative individuals, who are the entrepreneurs of this year. And we put out 2 trophies, we put out 2 awards categories, and we had quite a few nominations in the first year, which was quite surprising, because I thought, well, people would think, who gives you the right to sort of hand out an award? But actually, I think people look at where it's coming from. And if it's coming from a genuine place and they can see that the application process is transparent and you're just trying to do things the right way, then people get behind you.
But it's not you giving the award. You have a panel, don't you? And I'm going to be
Almost
part of
certainly, yes. So
the
the
panel
first thing I
this year.
did,
Yeah.
that's right. So the first thing I did is I put together a judging panel, and I ensured that I was not on it. I looked for credible people to be on that judging panel, people who the industry trusted, and they bought into the concept, and they got around the table and they judged these applications. And then on the day, they gave out the actual awards. I think that's probably what made it even more credible, because I was just putting it all together, but I had no sway or influence over who got the awards.
So go on, how many this year? So here we are, 2024. We're only in April. I know because we've already had some pre-meets that there's going to be the judging. And as I said, I'm going to be part of that illustrious judging panel this year. How many are you expecting this year at the Property Investor Awards?
First and foremost, I want to say that again, because Vicky just casually threw that in there, but Vicky has been invited onto the judging panel for the 2024 Property Investors Awards. She's more than qualified, and I actually think back now, why haven't I asked her sooner? So we're delighted to have you on board as a judge for this year's awards. So this year we're going to have over 1,000 people at the Grosvenor House, a hotel in Mayfair. So that's a luxury venue, a fantastic venue. The royal family has put on events there, BAFTAs, etc. And actually, for the size of event that we've got now, we can't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's well, the only place we could potentially go is the Excel Centre, but that changes the event.
Oh yeah, that very definitely changes it. Not least because it's so far to get away. So you're going to make sure that I get copies of all these links, and we'll put links in the show notes to the Property Investor Awards. And I would just say to anybody, if you are involved in property now, look at getting either on the awards, or if you know someone that's worthy of an award, make sure that you're the one that nominates them. Don't assume somebody else will. And then make sure that you get your ticket, because the one thing I know about these events, that when these tickets go online, you're going to regret it if you're not there getting your ticket in. So
thanks. No, go ahead, please, Vicky. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see on one side you've got the Property Investor Awards. On the other side, you've got the Property Investor Bureau. So here we go. There's been another iteration here, and I think you said that actually came first. But what's the Property Investor Bureau?
Yeah, so what I said was the idea came first. but it wasn't the right time. So if, as a young man who wasn't very well known in the industry, decided to launch a bureau of property investors and an accreditation scheme with all this sort of authority that comes with it, I think people would have questioned that. But if, as a young man, I decided to launch the Property Investors Awards and gradually grew that, and then launched the bureau off the back of that, it was a lot more well received and well respected. So the bureau almost gained its credibility from the awards, but it was the initial idea. And with the bureau, I just had the idea that there's so much that can be done to support property investors in the industry. I'm not an educator, I'm not a mentor, I'm not a business consultant. And I've got friends like yourself, Vicky, who do that very well. I like creating things. I like creating the architecture, the infrastructure, putting things together, bringing people together. And I just thought that the Bureau will be a way for me to create continuous resource for the entire industry and support them. And that's why we created the Property Educators Accreditation Scheme, which I know you touched on earlier. And that came at a point in the industry where, you know, some things were happening, which I suppose were causing a bit of controversy in the industry. We had put together the Property Educators Accreditation Scheme a year or so before that, but we're still setting up a lot of the foundations for it. And then when that controversy occurred, people just started reaching out to us to say, you know, what's your thoughts on this situation and how can you help stop this from reoccurring again and these sorts of things. And I kept saying, well, actually, what we're doing is not changed by the controversy. We will continue to do exactly what we're doing, which is we're trying to increase standards. How do you increase standards? Well, let's look at a baseline. Let's look at a minimum baseline for what all educators who are signed up to us will adhere to. Simple things like everyone has a complaints procedure. Everyone has firm and accessible terms and conditions. Everyone has a visible money-back guarantee. And everyone's gone through the probation period where actually, if you want to sign up to us, there's 6 months where people can comment on the application. And if you're somebody who is not really trying to do things in the light, you're not really going to want to be involved in that process because you have no control over that process. So you start to separate those people who are trying to do things in a way which is credible, transparent, forward thinking, to those people who are just trying to maybe separate people from their money.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? There's a bit of me that thinks, you know, because I normally keep this to about 40 minutes and we're there. And there's a bit of me going, shall we make this the second episode? I think I'm going to break.
God.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break my own rule and go, I think I want to stay with this conversation in this episode, because normally I'd like go, oh, can I have some more of your time a bit down the line and we'll record again. And that makes everybody stop. But we haven't got to a natural end. We're not there because you've just said that you're doing this and I want to get in and interrogate it. And I don't want to pull that out into another episode. So if that's all right with you, have you got the time to just keep going, and we'll keep going now?
Because it's you that's asking. Yes, let's do it. It's fine.
Honestly, you are such a charmer. You really are. So look, let's get into this property accreditation thing. And you've hinted, and I know that you don't want to talk in detail. But I think what we can generally say is that, I don't know over what time period, COVID messes with your head, doesn't it really? But I'm going to go with, say, like over the last 10 years, the prevalence and the growth of property education companies from very big branded names that you know, run group events. I mean, that's how I started. I haven't heard anything in your conversation yet about you taking formal education. You've done it through networking and bringing in the business skills and applying business skills to this. But I parted with a vast amount of money as a family group. So first of all, I got hooked into come along to a free 2 hour, and I went to the free 2 hour. And I think the thing for me is I then realized that I'd never had the language of property. I knew that property was a good idea, but because I didn't have the words buy to let and probably even the concept of a property investor as a thing, I knew that there were stocks and shares invested, and I knew that rich people had property, but I hadn't really put it all together, that it suddenly switched on all these light bulbs for me. And then it was as if I'd had blinkers on. All of a sudden, all this stuff that had been in my periphery my whole life just suddenly came into focus. But from that free event, we got sold into the classic, you know, 795, I think, for a 3-day weekend. And little did I know until I then actually worked for that organization that the whole process is, Friday morning is the bringing everybody together, the catching you up. Friday afternoon, you get into a bit of content. Saturday morning, you have a bit of content. Saturday afternoon, we start the sale. There's usually an exercise. The exercise then takes us through, and that exercise then starts to sort the wheat from the chaff, as the saying goes, so that on the Sunday morning, people are putting hands up, yes, this, me, yes, me. And at the back of the room, the team are spotting the people putting their hands up, and they're spotting the ones that they're going to go and sell to. And then all of Sunday afternoon is just hardcore sales. So you're really getting like the one day of content. Now that has been running since 2008. It is still running today at 2024. The company has just repeatedly changed its name, which is a very odd thing to do. Why would you keep walking away from the brand that you had? So it's interesting, isn't it, how this works? And that's just one organization that I've had a relationship with, but we've also got smaller individuals, shall we say individuals rather than, I was trying to think of a word to say small companies, but we've also got individuals. And I remember at one networking event, for example, speaking to someone, and they came up to me and were trying to ask me if I wanted a mentor, and that they could mentor me. And then when I asked what they'd done, they literally had done one deal and they were offering a mentorship. They were going to then teach, not teach me like I'm so big, but, we're going to teach me or you or anyone else that listened to them. Having done one deal, they felt that they were qualified to then go and do that for other people. And when you first told me about the accreditation scheme, I thought, this is very much what we need, because if we don't create something from the inside, as you say, it's going to be put on to us. So
Well,
have you
go ahead, please. No, go ahead.
have you had government or council? I mean, so the councils have got their own sort of like little accreditation schemes in terms of landlords, but this is very specifically for property education. Have you caught the attention of sort of governmental councils?
Yeah, so we have the PRS, which is one of the two government-backed redress schemes in the UK. They are our redress scheme. So they back the scheme, and they backed it from day one, actually. I've recently been introduced to a chap from Trading Standards who have also caught their eye. It's more a case of the government understand that, okay, there may be an issue here, but it's not top priority for them at this point. And I say, well, actually, let's not sit around until it becomes top priority, because it will only become top priority for negative reasons. Let's start changing things now. So by the time they get around to it, we've pretty much got things under control. And we're doing it in a way which actually makes sense for everybody involved. So the sorts of people and companies that come to us, they're companies that actually want to do things right. And what you mentioned about the individual who goes out there and buys a single property, then goes out and starts training people, I think there's nothing wrong with it. And I'll tell you why. Not that I do formal training, but as long as you're transparent, honest, and you know that the person who you're selling to understands what is on offer, which really and truly is, I'm a beginner who's probably one step further than you. And if you want to maybe be taught by somebody that's just been through what you're about to go through, then this is what I have to offer.
Yeah.
Opposed to, I'm a beginner, but I'm going to tell you how to build a £1 million portfolio, or, buy 20 houses in 12 months, etc. That's where the issues start to occur.
Yes, which was more where this was leaning to. Yeah. Not that I'm a beginner or you a beginner. Let me, join me on my journey, and I'll break my way through the bushes and you can follow me through, so that you don't get, scratched on the way. This was more, look, I know how to do it, and I can help you get rich, and then asking the questions. And the thing is, a lot of people don't ask the questions. And you've said that, the obvious thing of, making sure that there are terms and conditions, that you've got guarantees, you've got this, that, and the other. But if you don't know, again, it's the language, isn't it? If you don't know what you don't know to ask the questions like, oh, is there a money back guarantee? Because why would you, I know it's going to, the answer is going to be obvious in a minute, but why would you think that taking a property training course would have a money back guarantee? That's the sort of thing, you take your shoes back. You can't take your education back, can you? You know, so you don't, I would not have connected those two things.
You're right. And, you know, it's only through education and awareness that these things become put into the limelight. Now, where we are with us, where we are with, at the Property Investors Bureau is we've not focused really on getting the word out there as such. We've been focused on building the infrastructure because I'm not sure if I told you, Vicky, but I am still a programmer. So I software develop for our businesses only.
Yeah.
So I don't contract my work out to anybody, but I love programming. And I'm all about building modules. Once you've decided what the infrastructure for the database is going to be and you build the necessary modules around it, then and only then can you go out and basically test the loads, as one might call it.
Yeah. Whether you can cope with it. Yeah.
Correct. And, you know, people find us. Those people that find us are what I will call the early adopters. And those people, as soon as they find us, they support us. They're bought into what we do. They become a part of the ecosystem and they become a part of the solution. There will come a point in the very near future where we're ready to go mass market with things. And at that point, everybody who is involved will gain the benefit of being on this side.
Yeah. Well, I think, was the first meeting last year that we came to? Was that the first time?
No. Oh, so you're talking about, yes, the Property Educators Summit. So the Property Educators Summit was born out of the Property Educators Accreditation Scheme. That's become the inaugural event for property educators. So it's an industry event, which is just for accredited property educators and those going through the application process. And it's been such a delight. So this year, I'm not sure if you've seen the save the date yet, Vicky?
I don't think I have, no.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll ask the office because I think that went out yesterday. It's going to have 100 educators. Last year it was 40.
Yes.
This year, 100 educators at the Mayfair Hotel. You know,
Nice.
and you can't, if you're not an educator, unfortunately, you can't come to this event. It's just for people who are educating and have gone through the accreditation scheme or are currently applying to be there. But I'll give you a bit of a taste though. We have a chap who founded a bank come to speak at the event.
Wow.
And he founded a very well-known property bank. I can't say much more about that just yet until we get information. We have a lady who is an operations manager for 22,000 student beds in the UK.
Wow.
Teaching us about scaling and operations. We have people from the trading standards and the PRS. So these are people who I think educators, mentors, coaches, consultants, they will be able to look at and think, well, actually, our business may not be on that scale, but there'll be things we'll be able to learn from them.
Yeah.
Be able to take back and say, well, actually, let's implement and maybe teach our own students these things.
Yes. So that we can sort of like learn from one another. And like you're talking about modules, I've got my core thing that I do, but if I know that someone does that thing very well, then I can have that module of theirs attached to my module and add more value.
Can I give you another exclusive? Because I think we're now we're in flow, Vicky. That's what I like. So with my tech hat back on, what I realized from the last year's summit is that, you know, there are a few people out there who are educators, but you've got products and services that actually complement one another.
Yeah.
And you may actually like one another.
You may.
But there's not been an application that makes it easy for you to pull out Vicky Welsh's property investment course and then have people apply back from within the accredited community to say, we would like to promote your product. We're on the verge of launching that, but now that will be launched at the actual summit. Now that's an exclusive, so I'm not going to go mainstream with that. But Vicky,
well, this won't come out for about 2 months, so you'll be able to be getting your news out before
21st of June is the summit.
Yeah, okay. Oh, in fact, yes, I think I have seen that date. I have. Yes. So that's all right. So this podcast will probably come out just in a couple of weeks before that event then. So that's all right. So we won't be spilling the beans too soon.
Excellent.
So how are you seeing generally, you know, if we stay on this topic of the property education market, how are you seeing it evolving at the moment? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? I mean, you know, we all hear little bits of scandals. I mean, sometimes I hear about property investors themselves that have followed strategies that have maybe made them take risks and go bigger or whatever than potentially they could have sensibly, and then something's happened in the market. You know, we've just had interest rates go up quite astronomically last year, but they're certainly higher than they have been in the last few years. And you see sometimes people get into difficulty and then they're having to sell off their portfolios. But I haven't really, except for, you know, some of those early dramas that we spoke about a couple of years ago, I haven't really come across any huge controversy. Does that mean it's dying down? Is there still the appetite for property investment knowledge around, do you think? Is it growing?
Well, Vicky, you're still in business.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
And
fair
I
point,
assume
I
that the
suppose.
people who are paying you want to learn about property investment. I
Yeah.
will tell you this, you know, 2006 is when I bought my first property. 2008 was probably when I started to ramp it up. Now, you may remember back in 2008, economic collapse, it was the financial crash.
It's when I started.
Yes, exactly. So I'm not sure if you remember, but there were all sorts of landlords and investors telling me when I was coming in, Cyril, there's nothing left for you. You know, mortgage express mortgages, they're going. You might as well pack your bags, go back, study another course at university or something, but there's nothing left in this industry. But, you know, I looked at it and I thought, well, this is all I know. And if these are the hard times, I'm building what I'm building around these hard times. So I actually think it's more beneficial for those coming in because they'll be building their businesses around current circumstances.
Yeah.
Whereas us legacy investors, unfortunately, we have legacy portfolios. So unless you're unencumbered, you may have to deal with the interest rate increases. And if you've got a large portfolio, which was not maybe on fixed terms at the time, then you would have got stung. In addition to that, if you've got a large HMO portfolio, you would have had to deal with the energy increases if you're paying the bills. And if you are in that situation, you're probably still dealing with the repercussions of that. And there'll be brighter days ahead, etc. But you have things to think about. Those of you who are just getting into the industry now, you can make your business whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
As times get better, just like, you know, Vicky and I did back in 2008, you will see things skyrocket. Because I remember, you know, when it got to 2015, 2016, 2017, we did some fantastic deals. Fantastic deals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you that actually starting out now, when people say the interest rates are high, but they're not, they're normal, that if your deals work now, then when the interest rates drop, you're just making more money. Whereas if you bought, and I've been speaking to people who bought, you know, 3 and 5 years ago, and they bought when the interest rates were low, people coming out of 1% and 2% mortgages, and they're being faced with 5 or 6 now. Now it's hurting them. And that's because they didn't do that. Is it sense checking really? Or is it risk assessment of, okay, I've got a mortgage at, let's say 2%, but in the past, interest rates have been 5%. Why don't I see what happens to my cash flow at 5%? And then maybe I'll check at 7%. And I remember that was possibly the one piece of really good advice I got out of my training, because again, the training, so I'd already bought a couple of properties in 2004 and then remortgaged in 2007 so I could go in 2008, and that's when I was sort of doing my property training. And so we knew we were getting into the market at a time where interest rates might change. So to look at, does the deal work at 4%? Does it work at 6%? Does it work at 8%? And what number does it get to the point where my cash flow drops so low that I'm uncomfortable? And what is that number? And so back in the day, I never wanted cash flow below 100, but I wanted cash flow above 200. But I knew when an interest rate reaches a certain point, I'll get 200. And when it reaches another point, I'll get 100. And I knew what those numbers were. And so one thing I've always done is been watching the interest rates and I don't know if you've got this as well, but got a feel for them. So yeah, I know what the media is saying, but I don't see why the market's going to change that way. You know, post-COVID, I couldn't understand how there weren't going to be an awful lot of people made redundant. I'm still amazed at why a lot of people weren't made redundant. And I think it's probably because a lot of people who were here as foreign nationals had gone home, both as part of Brexit and everything. And so I was sort of fully expecting that there would be a lot more property come in the market, and it didn't. And if it had, then that might have changed things. So I was just looking at what's going to change, what's not going to change, and do that all the time. Do you keep an eye on the rates? Do you keep an eye on what the market's on? Where's your
Yes.
source of income? Source of information?
Yeah, so I tend to take my source of information from everywhere. I'm continuously looking at what's going on with the markets, and I don't just focus on the UK property market. I focus on what's going on in the financial markets. I look at what's going on in America a lot of the time. I look at what's going on in China, because you may think, how's the collapse of Evergrande going to affect my UK HMO? But actually, when you start to understand that there are a lot of financial institutions, UK and abroad, that bought into Chinese assets, and a lot of these commercial units that Evergrande was putting up, and these large apartment blocks, etc., they were put into these, I wouldn't say controversial, but they were wrapped in financial assets and sold out to financial institutions.
Mm.
On these institutions' balance sheets, a lot of these assets are still priced based on historic values. And if they had to mark them to market, their balance sheet wouldn't really balance.
No.
So then you think, well, actually, if you've got a UK bank that's bought into these financial assets and they're not marking to market, and then all of a sudden it turns out that Evergrande is definitely not coming back and not being saved, and then you now need to take those asset values to zero, and then all of a sudden there's an imbalance on the financial institution's balance sheet, which may cause a margin call if they're leveraged. Then they might have to take some certain actions, which is calling in loans or putting up interest rates for their bank and doing all sorts of things that will potentially have an effect on your individual investment in the UK. So it's understanding that we don't live, although you might say we live on an island, we are not an island that can't be touched.
Yeah.
What goes on in other parts of the world does have an impact on us, and you should take information from wherever possible.
Yes. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I love paying attention to what others going on. I don't tend to probably do it to the same degree you do, because I quite like my tomatoes and I spend a lot of time looking at them as well.
Yeah.
All right. So look, let's look at where we've got to now, because say we've gone longer. We've sort of like done a double episode, which I've never done before. So while you don't do many podcasts, I don't do many long podcasts, but I think this is very definitely worth it. So we've gone from, let me do an introduction for Cyril. So Cyril Thomas started life as a university student who recognized that he could achieve a lot more if he set his mind to it. He changed degrees, and while doing effectively his second degree, he set up a business. And with that business, he took that money and he recognized, because he loved a spreadsheet and he was doing accounts anyway, that property made sense for him, and started investing in property, and was entrepreneurial from the day one. So not just a simple 2-bed flat, it was an HMO. And some of that is sort of understanding the student market, but you've then broadened into being very much a commercial landlord. And that's maybe that's what we need to do, Cyril. We do need a second conversation. I think we need to get into top tips around the commercial thing. So let's park that for a second. But running alongside that, if you like, that's the money line, the money journey, and the business brain, is this relationship networking side of you. So you've got the Essex group that you brought together because you wanted like-minded people when you were at university. Then you've recognized that you could take that and model that in the property world that you were in, and you were just starting out, and you brought people to you there. And then you've taken that into, first of all, the Christmas party and the Entrepreneurial Awards, which is all interlinked with the Property Investor Bureau, and now the Property Educators Accreditation Scheme. And out of that, you've gone from, if you like, a need to have, maybe a need's a bit strong, but a desire to have connections with like-minded people, to now creating something where, and I say it like this, like-minded people who want to see the best for their industry can come together under the platform or within the platform that you're creating. How's that if I was what was the name of that man who had the red book, and it was, oh, this is your life with, oh,
I
are
know
you
who
old
you're
enough?
talking about. I know, but I
Yeah.
don't watch much TV, but I actually do know who you're talking about. Um,
Yes.
so there's a term which I like to use when talking about what I'm trying to achieve with the property industry. And the term is, I would like to decentralize the property industry.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, you will have people within your community that will go out and become very successful. There'll be people in other communities that may go out and become very successful. I want everybody to be able to talk to everybody. I want the person who finds a deal in your community and needs to potentially sell it to somebody in Hull to be able to find the dozen or so investors that might be there without any issue whatsoever. I want that connectivity to be in place because I feel that's empowering. If you know that you can be found by anybody who needs to find you, and you can find anybody that you need to find, then all of a sudden there's no excuse. So you don't need to restrict yourself just to go into the monthly networking events. Yes, if you want that physical interaction, you want to be there in the room and get the benefit from that, you can do that if you're that way inclined. But if you are that maybe more, I suppose, what's the word for people who don't like to sort of be out there?
Me.
Introvert. If you're a bit more introverted, you'd rather just do the gardening and stuff like that, which
Yeah.
this that's fantastically well, but you shouldn't be restricted from having access.
Yeah. But it's
So,
not just for the introverts, is it? It's actually for the time conscious.
conscious
If I
too.
suddenly want to invest somewhere else, or I accidentally stumbled, because like I might be speaking to a client and I've got one client who's got trying to sell something in Grimsby, but I don't want to have to go networking in Grimsby in order to find him the connections. If I could go online and do it. So is that the more to come for the Investor Bureau? Is that
So
more
Vicky,
of your
you've
modules?
teased it out. I mean, there's a lot of things that I wasn't planning on discussing today, but there's a part on the PIB website. So the website is pibuk.org.
Yeah.
Now,
We'll
there's
put the
an
links
area,
in here as well.
thank you. There's an area there which just says find an investor. And on there, you'll see a few dozen property investor profiles that have already, the early adopters that are already on there. And we're just trialing it. We're not doing anything loud. You're on there, people can find you. And you know what? People are contacting them. People are contacting them because actually they're the only people on there at the moment. People, if they're looking for a deal in Chelmsford or they're looking to sell a deal in Chelmsford, these people are getting messages. Now, it's working on a small scale now. And the reason why I haven't sent it to our 20,000 database is because I want to make sure that it's ready for that traffic before we go out there. But once it's out there, we then are in a situation where, Vicky, your students can find deals anywhere in the country. But they
Yeah.
will also have access. They'll have access to anyone anywhere in the country who they could potentially JV with, sell the deal to, do whatever they want. Because I'm not interested in gatekeeping. What I say is actually, Vicky, we've made it, we've done it, we've done what we need to do, and we're continuing to do what we want to do. There should be no reason why, the mother with 3 kids or the person who maybe will start their journey at the age of 50 or 55, why they shouldn't have the tools and resources that modern day technology allows them to have, but our industry just been a bit slow about adopting it.
Wow. I think that's a place to pause at. That's a mission statement if ever I heard one. That's awesome. Yeah, why not? Absolutely. I didn't quite get the decentralization. I didn't understand the
Yeah,
decentralization,
so
but
okay,
it's actually the making it accessible for all, taking it's not going to be kept behind walls for only the
everyone's
secret to know.
connected to everyone. So the whole point I come from a bit of a tech background in regards to, and I love the whole concept of the blockchain. You might have heard that concept. And the blockchain basically just means that, there's no gatekeepers. Anyone can look at any address. Anyone can look into anything. Everything's connected. And if
Yes.
you get that principle, you say, well, in the property industry, to be a successful property investor, you just need to know people. You just need to be able to know where to go when you have a deal or where to go when you need the money. And then once you've got the education, which someone like yourself, Vicky, you're very good at teaching the education. They can get that from you, securing the deal. They can learn that from you. But once you secure the deal, once you've got the education, to go out there and convert that deal into something which is making you profit, you need somebody at the other end.
Yeah.
That's where the connection and decentralization becomes a large part of it.
Awesome. Awesome. Cyril, I am so grateful for your time on so many levels. A, doing this for me when you don't normally do it. B, staying a bit longer because we were sort of in a flow there that I really felt it was worth staying this extra half an hour. And then just sharing so much, setting so much up, being so inspirational, because there are going to be loads of people out there, potentially even university students, who just maybe didn't think that what you first thought was possible, and now they'll know. But equally, there could be the, as you said before, the 55-year-old who's suddenly woken up, done everything that they were told to do, got themselves the good job, the house, the mortgage, and they're looking around going, either is this all there is, or this isn't what I really wanted anyway. And now knowing that, by making those connections, they can find a different way. So, listener, just the amount of wish that you must have got out of this particular podcast is huge. Too much to mention. There are all of the links that are going to be in the show notes so that you can connect into all of this stuff that Cyril's involved in, and obviously connect with Cyril himself. You've also got the story, the inspiration in two ways. One, the property, and of course, we're going to pick up on the commercial stuff, because I'm not going to keep going for another hour on commercial. We'll do that again separately. So we've got the commercial stuff, but also thinking about those connections that Cyril's made between, I need this. I want to be able to connect with property investors. And rather than traveling all around the country, why don't I put on an event and get them all to come? Having those independent networking, maybe that's a plea, more independent networking meetings, put them up, because I did love going to those, and they've sort of stopped so much, haven't they, since COVID? So that's a big shame. Cyril, superstar. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I didn't realize I'd enjoy it so much. And I say thank you to your community as well, because I know you must have a fantastic community under your leadership.
Oh, thank you very much. I think now we might have you as might have turned the monster, woken the monster up. You're going to be a new podcast guesting, but no podcast, other podcasts that you might record can come out before this one. This one needs to go out first, because otherwise it'll all go wrong. Cyril, thank you so much. Will you come back and talk commercial for me?
I will come back, and we will speak about when.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vicky.
So as I said, everybody, you've got your notes at the bottom. Make sure you listen. Please follow along. Make sure that you leave some comments. Cyril would love to know what you thought of this, I'm sure. And thank you very much. And I'll speak to you again next week. Bye-bye.